The Maternity and Midwifery Forum brings you Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. All your CPD and revalidation needs met in one place. Our expertly curated box sets are the perfect way to engage with the latest thinking, issue by issue. They make revalidation easy and are the perfect accompaniment to any project or university coursework. In addition to video from expert speakers across maternity and midwifery, there is easily accessible research and links to the latest government policy documents. Our reflective questions at the end are the perfect primer for your revalidation. In the same way the Maternity and Midwifery Forum provides certificates to show that you have attended these festivals, we can provide certificates for those who have consumed the content of a box set and submitted their written answers to the reflective questions provided by our curator, Dr. Jenny Hall. Midwives, maternity professionals and students, do not miss out. Subscribe to Matflix today. Check out the box sets at www.matflix.co.uk.
I'm Nicole Rajan Brown. I'm a proud midwife and I'm proud to be supporting the Maternity and Midwifery Forum, who have helped me to grow, and for creating wonderful professional digital and online resources for midwives across the globe. The Maternity and Midwifery Forum ran their programs free and online all through COVID. Now we want to grow the catalogue, spread it worldwide and keep it free to use for students and staff. To do this, we have launched a fundraising appeal to help keep all of the 8 wonderful maternity and midwifery festivals free. Keep the weekly Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the weekly newsletters free to midwives and maternity staff. You regularly tell us how much you value these free resources, so do give what you can.
And welcome this week to Series 13 and Session 6 of the Maternity and Midwifery Hour. My name's Sue MacDonald and I'm the curator for the Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the Maternity and Midwifery Festivals. And it's my pleasure to be chairing this evening's session. And I've got two lovely guests this evening, Sally Pizarro and Isabel Brock. And because we always do this, I'm going to ask them to share with us a moment of the week just to get us started and in the mood for Maternity and Midwifery Hour. So shall I start with Isabel? Because I think she's got something delicious coming.
Hello, everyone all across the planet. Thank you, Sue, for inviting me. It's such an honor and to be here with Sally. Gosh, my little story this week. I got an email yesterday that looks so very promising. We are going to talk today about Ehlers-Danlos syndromes and all their comorbidities. And I'm actually not only a clinician, I'm also a patient with the whole litany of those comorbidities. And I got very sick in 2016 when we were writing the new diagnostic criteria. From gas poisoning, and I couldn't walk anymore. I had convulsions. I couldn't work or do anything. And I had the absolute fortune of having healthcare professionals all over the planet from different medical systems to help me out of it. And now I can walk and I can think. Next step is dancing, hopefully. But the amazing email that came in yesterday was, and that is why I'm sharing it with you all. I find it quite fitting. I have gone through an IVF cycle and it worked. And it looks as though I might hopefully be in need of the pregnancy guidelines for EDS that we just finished, and maybe hopefully in need of one of you out there in the near future.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. And how special that you shared it with us, Isabel.
So my body got healthy enough to do this.
Oh, wow. And well, that's really very special. And we're going to all be keeping our fingers and toes and everything crossed. Everything's going to go beautifully for you. And I hope you get some lovely care from lovely midwives and doctors to make sure you stay good and healthy with that baby. How wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, Sally, I don't know if you're going to beat that one.
No, not really. Congratulations, Isabel. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I guess the only thing I have is that it's my birthday on Friday. So that's not always nice, always fun. But it doesn't beat you.
Well, that's actually, that's 2 birthdays, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 things to celebrate there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Now we're going to give our guests a little moment's respite, and I'm just going to remind everybody, for those people who are new to us, and for those people who have been with us for 4 years, because the Maternity and Midwifery Hour started 4 years ago with the onset of the lockdown for COVID-19. We started to make sure that midwives and student midwives and people in maternity services had some sort of linkage to each other, some continuing professional development and information above all, because at that time it's very difficult to get information, especially around COVID-19. And there's a lot of activity around changing services, the way people were working. And we managed to have some fantastic sessions with doctors, midwives, managers, all sorts, talking about what was happening in their services. And we've kind of carried on. So we're in our 4th year, in our series 13, coming up for series 14 in the autumn. And I just need to also remind everybody that everything's recorded. So you don't miss anything at all. If you have a power cut or your computer blows up or you just can't make the session that's going, you can access it through the lovely Matflix, which is on our resources sheet. That's a thing to remind me to say you have a resources sheet with lots of information on, and that's on it. So you can access anything for free. You can use it for your revalidation, any projects you're doing, dissertations, university work, whatever. just to improve your knowledge about things. And hopefully, for those of you who are new to us, welcome from wherever you are in the world. Now, I know we have lots of people from all over the world joining us, as well as our UK midwives and students. So welcome from wherever you are in the planet, as Isabel put it, which was lovely. And you can access anything, and you might just want to update. I have to say, it can be a little bit addictive. You start having a look at something, look at one thing. You know, it's like doing a literature search for those of you who are in study at the moment. You start on one thing and then you waft along and you find something even more interesting, and you can spend many happy hours. But it's a good addiction. It's a good addiction to have. Okay, the other thing I want to say is a big thank you to our students and our midwives for all they're doing at the moment. Just in case you don't get any thank yous from the folk around, but I'm sure you do. Also, just to remind you to look after yourselves the way you want to look after mums and babies and families, because you are as important. You need to care for yourselves. And I know we're so busy juggling everything, including our work and home life, it can be difficult to find our own time. And that's my cue to get my lovely calendar out, my Meaningful May. This is the Action for Happiness. This is also on your resources list. And as I always whip this out, because every day it has a little mindful something, which I think helps us all just to focus on something other than the busyness of life. So today would have been find a way to help a project or charity you care about. Now, because it's the end of the day in the UK, not the rest of the world, I'm going to give you tomorrow's as well, because I think this is a good one. 23rd is recall 3 things you've done that you are proud of. We find it very easy to kind of criticize ourselves sometimes. This is your homework. Think about what you've done well, 3 things, and write them down in your little journal, your diary, or somewhere, and look at them and remember what you've done. Achievements, it's really good. Now, big news here. This is my news flash here. I'm just keeping on the time. This evening, the Prime Minister called a general election in the UK. So I think we're going to be a bit busy with lots of electioneering and thinking about what we want for the future until the 4th of July, which is in the summer, and I believe is the American Day of Independence, unless I'm much mistaken. So there's going to be a lot of going on there. There's still a focus on the APPG of the birth trauma report, also on your list. I'm working my way through it, and I'm going to write something up, and we are going to revisit this at a later point. But it's a very important report in that it's women's voices about their experiences, some from a long time ago, some from quite near ago. And it's important for us to develop our knowledge and skills alongside listening to what women have said, what we've not got quite right, and making sure that we really do hear what women are saying. And the partners, obviously, to improve our care and our communication, and above all, the kindness that we can do for women and babies and families, really important. Also, today is World Preeclampsia Day, and the 2024 theme is Predict, Prevent, Prevail, which I think I've mentioned before. And there is a Clark's campaign, which has been launched by APEC, which is the Association for Preeclampsia, to get the vital placental growth factor test taking place in Scotland, because that's quite accessible in England. And there's a new publication from the International Confederation of Midwives, Midwifery Education Glossary of Terms. This is one for the educationists or anyone who's interested in education. That's also in the resources. So that's almost my little news feature for now. I'm going to move, because I don't want to take any time from our 2 wonderful speakers, because it's a very interesting area of work, and it's very applicable to us as midwives and student midwives. So we're going to be looking at, I bet I pronounce this wrong, but the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, which affects connective tissue throughout the body and has profound impacts during pregnancy, birth, and beyond. So we're really delighted to have our 2 speakers, both of whom have got huge expertise in this whole area. I'm going to start with Dr. Sally Pizarro, who was known by many of you, I'm sure. And she's got a wonderful, wonderful title, which is a research-enriched learning lead for the Research Centre for Healthcare and Communities and Programme Director at the Structured PhD in Healthcare Sciences. She's also a Fellow of the Royal College of Midwives, a Senior Fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and a Nursing and Midwifery Council panellist. So she's a pretty busy person. Her research, and I ought to also say at this point, both CVs are online, and I'm just giving edited highlights at the moment, so I don't take too much from their presentations. Sally's research has been focused on gender, achieving reproductive justice for all, and addressing inequalities in reproductive services, well-being, leadership, and professional identity of the healthcare workforce. And she's also the lead midwife for www.hedsttogether.com, an invited member of the Ehlers-Danlos Society's International Consortium and Outstanding Consortium Member of the Year. She got the award for that, so that she's pretty experienced and pretty special. So we're delighted you're with us, Sally. Thank you so much for coming. The screen is now yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue, for inviting me, and hello, everybody. Just to start off, this whole session will be about hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and hypermobility spectrum disorders, and May is Ehlers-Danlos Awareness Month, so it's the perfect month to be doing this because we're raising awareness about the condition. I certainly, when I started on this journey, had never heard of it before, and it was a colleague of mine, Dr. Gemma Pierce, who you'll see in the reference lists, and we worked together quite a lot on this, that came up to me. She said, "Oh, you know, Sally, you're a midwife. If someone was having a baby and they had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, what would you do? How would you approach their care?" And I said, "I've no idea. I've no idea what this syndrome is. Never heard of it before. What is it and what does it do?" And Gemma is quite open about the fact that she has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she's recently had a baby, actually. And she said, "I think it's really, really impactful. I think it's impacting a lot of people in their childbearing years when they're having their families. And I think there's hardly any research being done on this. And I think people are really lost, knowing what to do, what research was, what the evidence was, and there wasn't a lot at all. And then I had my daughter, and I was kind of off on maternity leave with a bit of time on my hands. You know, my baby slept a lot and breastfed a lot. And I was starting to read up on Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and its links to pregnancy. And we put together our first kind of literature review, but it was kind of an overview. It wasn't really systematic. It was just, hey, there's something here. Does anybody know about this? What's out there? Some of the research was quite dated. It was based on clinical case studies. It wasn't very robust, but it gave us an idea of what was out there. And when we published that, it really went bonkers. Everybody was trying to get hold of this paper, and it seemed that it was really meaningful for a lot of people. And we said, well, it's not really great. It's just our initial kind of thinking on this. And it was made open access because so many people were in demand for this research. And then we updated it a couple of years later because some more research came out. Then during COVID, we did kind of an online interview study where we were interviewing people from all over the world who'd had babies and had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and their experiences. So we were able to see kind of what themes were coming up and what problems people were finding with this, and that kind of directed us in future research. And after that, Gemma and I, it's not just Gemma and I, there was a whole team of people we were working with, and a team of people we kind of bring together to get their voices included in what's needed and where we should be going. But we did a really large scale international survey on the complications and outcomes of people having babies with this, so we could get larger data sets on that. And also we asked healthcare professionals, you know, if you know anything about this, what do you do? How do you care for people? What educational tools would help you if you don't know anything about this? And overwhelmingly, they said clinical guidelines. We need clinical guidelines. We have no idea a lot of the time what the best thing to do is, and there's nothing uniformed about this. And another piece of work we did around that time was co-creation. So we're very keen on co-creating things with experts, but also with people with lived experience. And we knew a lot of people who had hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or hypermobility spectrum disorders who were either patients, patient advocates, had babies, or actually clinicians themselves. So that was really useful because we could pull together kind of expert groups in one room, if you like, or online, to co-create some tools that would be useful not just for people having babies, but for people caring for people having babies. And that was, the first one was a decision-making tool. So if you go to headstogether.com, Sue said at the beginning, www.headstogether, that's HEDS together, because heads, that's the short version for hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. You'll find all the resources there, and they're free to download. And one of them is a downloadable decision-making tool, which is kind of bespoke to you in that it has some key facts about hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome at the top and some things you might want to consider down the side. And then down the other side is things that are unique to you as a childbearing person, or, you know, things that you might need to consider, you know, while you're having care, and things you want people to know about you. Because one thing we do know is it's not uniform. Not everybody experiences it the same. Some people might say, well, it's my shoulder joint that's the real problem, or my hip that's the real problem, or I have particular problems with gastrointestinal problems, or whatever it is. There's always something unique to the person. So that's free to download. There's also an infomercial about hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and pregnancy, which we're very grateful to the Royal College of Midwives and the societies that are involved in HEDS that helped us put that together, because that's like an information video that people can watch to learn more about it and also learn how to use the tools. And then we had an iLearn module as well developed with the Royal College of Midwives, so people can just have a coffee morning, kind of sit down and a micro CPD, if you like, around this. So they were the kind of things we put together. And people were saying to us, you know, I wish I'd have had this before. Nobody knew about the condition I had, or if they did know, they didn't know what to do with me, or I didn't know what the best thing to do was. Should I have a home birth? Should I go into hospital? Should I have a vaginal birth, a cesarean section? I had no idea how to make my choices because there was no evidence for me to make my own evidence-based decisions, which is what we're all advocating for, and what we all want is for people to have the right information to make the decisions that are right for them. And some people were having diagnoses after they had their families, some people during when they were having their families, and some people before. So there's a real mix. But what we now think is that this is not a rare condition, it's just rarely diagnosed. And what we published in our qualitative work is that we think around 1 in 20 pregnancies is affected by this. So it's not rare. There are rare types of EDS, don't get me wrong. The vascular type of EDS, there's sort of 13, 14 in total. Some of them are particularly rare, but the hypermobility type is not rare, we don't think. And one of the things that's interesting for me is that I think there's things that happen in clinical practice with people having babies that may well be related to this. So one of the things I think, for example, is when you've got somebody who's got a really long latent phase of labor and you keep saying, oh, you know, go for a walk, go home, have some paracetamol, have a bath, let's see how it goes. That can go on for days and days and days for some people. Some people even describe it happening for weeks. Then all of a sudden the birth is 0 to 60 and they end up having a baby in the car park. And that's definitely happened to me in my clinical career. And I've heard other people say that, oh, that happens as well. And it's just unpredictable. I think that might be something to do with connective tissues behaving in a way that we're not expecting, as in the uterus is behaving in a somewhat kind of unpredictable way for ages and ages and ages. Then all of a sudden, because the skin is potentially lax and the muscles are potentially lax, because it's all to do with connective tissues, all of a sudden this baby comes shooting out. And it's unpredictable for a number of reasons. So I think there are certain things that happen in practice that we might be able to link in future specifically to these conditions, but that's to be explored. Also, in water birth, for example, how do the tissues behave underwater with someone with a connective tissue disorder? That's something that interests me. All of these things we don't know. But what we do know now is that we've brought together a whole load of information, all of the studies we've found on this. We've done the big scoping review now, including our own research, other people's research, and clinical case studies, along with 15 co-creators. And those 15 co-creators worked kind of I think we were working on this for about 2 years because we really wanted to get it right. We had to make everybody kind of involved and happy, etc., about what was being done and what areas we were going to cover, what was important to people, what kind of evidence we had enough of to say, yes, we can make that recommendation with confidence, or no, we can't. That was really important to us. We also took the guidelines to Rome, and we took them to Arizona, where the Ehlers-Danlos Society was hosting their conferences, their education conferences, and we said to experts there, we've got these guidelines we're developing. Can you input on these, either as a member of the public, someone with the condition, or someone who's got expertise that we perhaps don't? And because we're members of the international consortium, we actually had a shopping list of people, thankfully, that we could go to that had expert kind of specialities in different areas. So, for example, anesthesia was really important for us that we cover, or rheumatology, genetics, really, really important areas we wanted to cover. So we were able to tap into that along the way. And then once we were happy with the basic structure, we were able to add things in and refine and refine and refine. And built in with the co-creation of these guidelines, we had a separate work stream, which was actually patient and public involvement. So we actually had that led by one of our wonderful patient advocates and patient co-creators, Maggie Buckley, who led the patient participant involvement. And she was able to do it across Europe in terms of focus groups, in terms of surveys, in terms of putting out questionnaires to people. So we got real information back on what mattered most to people. So we made sure that those things were ticked off and included where they could be. And we were able to listen to our kind of patient participants and patient co-creators throughout to say, does this make sense? Is this getting your point across? And us as clinicians as well, we were thinking, what's going to be useful to a colleague in this situation, not just for people with the pregnancy going through this, but what do people need? What are the tools they need? And what are the things they need to know in order to help that person at the time in an emergency or planning their birth, depending on what services they have around them. So we were able to really work closely with people over a period of 2 years to put these guidelines together and have those experts on board. And luckily we had those people co-author the article that was published on the 15th of May. So just, last week in PLOS One. So to have them as co-authors really meant that I felt that I was able to include them, their voices, as well as them as kind of equals on the project, working together, no hierarchies. That was really important for me and really exciting to do, because it meant that we were a team at the end of the day, and it was everybody coming together because we all felt that this was a really important thing to do. And the Ehlers-Danlos Society, very grateful to them because they enabled us to have this published open access. So there is no paywall gating anyone away from this information. You can go and download the guidelines yourself if you want to, but I believe the Ehlers-Danlos Society is working on a whole web page to be dedicated to this, with kind of lay summaries and pretty posters that people can hopefully download and either put in their notes, medical records, or put up on the wall on a poster or hand to their clinician directly, so that when they come and say to their clinician, I'm having a baby and I've got hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and the clinician looks a bit worried, thinking, what do I do? They've got something ready to hand over that's evidence-based. And that's not to say that these guidelines won't need updating very soon. I think there's more and more research coming out about this all the time. And so we will have to keep this updated and probably do this again in a few years' time. Keep us on our toes. But I think what we'd like to do is track impact, because we know already that about 2,000 people nearly have downloaded and shared these guidelines, and we want to get them translated into other languages as well. So what we're looking for is stories, really, of, I took this to my clinician and had a better experience because I had these guidelines, this changed for me, or I had a better experience because, or it helped a clinician to understand how I was feeling. So I think that's where we're at now. I can go through some of the guidelines, I can share some of the guidelines with you, but a lot of the time it's more about things to consider. We're not trying to be prescriptive like a policy. We're not saying you must do this, you must do that. What we have more of is things like, consider that these things might be more likely to happen, like the fast birth coming unexpectedly, or an epidural not working in the way you expect it to, or someone has a wound that won't heal. You sutured up a perineum or even the cesarean section, and it's coming open again. It's not coming back together, or the scar is forming in a different kind of way, and the skin is behaving more fragile than it usually would, or you would typically expect. those kind of things are kind of making clinicians aware and making people who are giving birth with the condition aware of what might happen. And also, we didn't just go kind of pregnancy and birth, we went but before pregnancy and birth, talking about what should you consider when you're getting pregnant in terms of genetic testing, thinking about contraception, even having sex in some cases can be different for a lot of people. And then we went post-birth, so recovery. And this is, I think, where people have a lot of the time the most trauma, because they don't recover in the same way that other people do. They have these delayed healing, and also caring for their babies. If you think about, if you want to feed your own baby, you're sitting in the same position for a long time. People with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome can't do that. So they're often dislocating or in a lot of pain because they can't do that. And we know if you're hypermobile and then you've got pregnancy hormones on top, you've got all the relaxin and everything, then yes, everyone's saying, well, of course you're loose, you've got loose connective tissue, you've got pregnancy hormones. But actually, what about when you've got hypermobility on top of that? How does that affect you in recovery and being able to be mobile potentially where you would normally expect someone to be, but you can't be as mobile with this condition? And that sounds like an oxymoron, having hypermobility but not being able to move. But these are the things that people tell us that that are really happening. And of course, we believe them. So many people say they're not believed with this condition, and I think they want to be heard. And I hope with all of our research, they have been heard. I hope they feel like they've been heard. And I hope this is the most useful thing we can do at this time, to give them these guidelines in a kind of digestible way. And of course, it's also kind of revealed lots of gaps, things we don't know. So we can't advise on, we can't even say this might happen, it might not. We don't know what's linked to what. And we don't know the kind of interrelatedness between conditions that we have a hint about, but we can't prove yet categorically. So there is a lot of unknowns, and I'm always kind of sad when I go to a conference and I get people asking me a specific question, and I just have to say, I still don't know, even after, leading the development of these guidelines, which, by the way, I think is quite exciting in itself, to develop international evidence-based guidelines. And to do that leading as a midwife is really kind of a cool thing, because I think midwives leading stuff, when midwives lead stuff, you get a different flavor on things. I think you get a different spin when it's a midwife who leads. And working interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary, I cannot emphasize enough how enriching that is. Midwives, we're great, but when we talk to each other, we already know what the other midwives knows pretty much. When you start working outside the profession and you collaborate in this way, you're enriched so much, and people are enriched by the midwifery knowledge as well. It's been a really great experience, I think, for everybody involved. So I guess I just wanted to use this as a space to launch the guidelines, introduce them to everybody, invite any questions, obviously, at the end, and hopefully get people to visit the headstogether.com website and contact us if you have any kind of impact stories about how this is supporting your practice, and have a read of the guidelines and let me know what you think.
Fabulous. So you're after some stories and feedback. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sally. I think a colleague has just said that you were the second most viewed speaker ever on the Maternity and Midwifery Forum, with more than 10,000 views. So I think if we can do that this time, it gets the message out. That's the most crucial thing.
This topic is, and how many people are looking and searching for something that just isn't there, and hopefully we're able to give them something now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think your statistic on thinking about 1 in 20 people, because one of my queries was how many people are actually diagnosed. Do we know that people are diagnosed? Because I guess unless you had a significant problem, you probably wouldn't know. So anyway, that's for another. I mustn't launch into questions as yet. Thank you so much, Sally, for starting off the whole area and getting us into this. I'm going to now say a huge welcome to Dr. Isabel Brock, who performs advanced clinical research and offers comprehensive services to clients with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, connective tissue disorders, dysautonomic, I'm not able to pronounce that, mast cell disorders, and problems with posture and proconception. These are some words, aren't they? Goodness.
I know, I have to learn them.
And Isabel's thesis work was the basis to create the EDS Paris scale, and that's a tool to rapidly screen for EDS based on a large case control study, and has 6 years of experience in EDS research at several medical clinics. She's helped open 2 clinics solely dedicated to EDS and its comorbidities. And she's a real gem because just additionally, she's fluent in at least 5 fluent languages: English, Italian, Swedish, French, and German. And she contributes to research and knowledge internationally, nay, across the planet. So welcome, Isabel. Thank you for coming. The screen is now yours.
Thank you so much for having me, Sue. Yes, these words are hard to pronounce. I had to learn proprioception as well, and I still misspell it sometimes. Dyslexic on top. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I always use EDS. It is just simply easier. And the other one is dysautonomia. So really our autonomic nervous system not behaving the way it should, or suboptimally, or doing whatever it wants. And the mast cells, our first defense of the immune system, first line of defense, is really often embedded in the connective tissue. And so what we are looking at here is that connective tissue, nearly 80% of our body, you have the immune system in there, and you have the nervous system ending there, the receptors in the connective tissue, and that's where they all communicate. And so what we are looking into also is this communication between these different systems, because our bodies communicate. I do find our medical systems would need to learn that, but our bodies already do. And so when we're looking at connective tissue and mast cells and the autonomic nervous system, we don't really know what are the mechanisms that link them. How are they correlated? Are they comorbidities? Is this one big thing, or where does it interconnect? And so patients as well as medical professionals have asked us quite often, what do we know? What does the literature say? And we didn't know. And so the amazing Maggie Buckley that Sally already mentioned, patient advocate extraordinaire, lovely, tried pushing me into doing a literature review over years, very lovingly. And so finally, some point, a coalition of physicians from all networks, from the EDS Society, the International Consortium, as well as from the dysautonomia side and the mast cell side, came together. And we did just a scoping review of the literature. And there are other reviews out there as well over the last years, 4. And sadly, what it reveals is that there was not much literature out there, but they were scoping reviews. And so we presented that in Rome at this at the International Scientific Consortium meeting there. And then I do believe it was very much the last day of that conference, and the Queen had sadly passed away on that day, and so nobody could leave back to the UK. And so Sally and I and Maggie sat down together in lovely Rome, in a lovely Italian restaurant over wine and very good pizza, I remember, and said, we have to go deeper into this. And we have to actually do a systematic literature review. We had been working on the guidelines, and I am honored to be working with Sally. She is amazing in everything she's teaching me in how to do these guidelines and these reviews. It is an absolute pleasure to work with her. And so you know me, I love the planet and languages and cultures, and we said we have to do this globally. Because when you look at it, connective tissue in Eastern medicines, for example, other medical systems, they talk in the first paragraph about connective tissue and mast cells, and you're astounded. And why doesn't biomedicine do that? So we said, we know that, for example, there was already an article out that acupuncture is possible in EDS. EDS has sometimes bleeding issues, and one would think, can we just put needles into everyone? Yes, it was possible in EDS, said that publication. And so we looked into other medical systems, and we see a lot of thoughts about connective tissue, about mast cells, about the autonomic nervous system. And for them, it's quite normal. And so the question we want to answer with this really global systematic review is, what is, if any, are there pathophysiological mechanisms between connective tissue disorders, mast cell activation, and dysautonomia? And to do a very thorough, systematic, global literature review to find out what are the different hypotheses out there, because maybe we don't have to invent the wheel anew. If we actually work together as a team on this planet, we could get so much further. And so brainstorm this together. There might be a different word for it, but it's the same concept behind it. We need to find out what is the actual translation, what is the concept, and then we might have different answers and hypotheses upon which we can then actually do further studies. And maybe there are different ways already that exist that we can bring together to help alleviate any symptoms or improve the quality of life of patients living with this. And so we went ahead, got a very global team together. At the moment, the core team covers 24 languages, 12 countries, all medical systems around the globe. So we're going with Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, Unani, naturopathy, Western medicine, anything we can find, so that we can really cover it and find out what are we talking about, because any medical system, we're all treating human beings. So therefore, what is out there? What can we do? With that, we have now gone as far as it is registered in Prospero, so we can do the systematic literature review. We are going to use 18 search databases all around the globe to really look into this. We have translators on the core team. Anything that comes up where we don't have the language, we will get others for it. We are covering mainly all specialties. As you well know, sadly, in Western medicine, there is no specialty for connective tissue. I hope we can change that soon. It covers far too much of the body. And so we are covering all of the specialties, the different specialties in other medical systems, including also veterinary medicine and all allied health professions. Veterinary medicine, especially because there are actually quite a lot of publications out there that look into connective tissue in animals, and they know a lot about it. So in order to find out what can be done, what happens, maybe we know in animals much better what happens in birth with animals that have connective tissue disorders, and maybe there's an answer there that we can study further in human. We don't know what's going on. We need to find out. That is where we are at. And we're hoping to do this within the next year. We've got the group together. We've got the keywords for all languages. We also had to translate. Obviously, this is not only a translation, this is linguistics also at its core. I did study linguistics before I studied medicine, so I like it. But sometimes when you translate something, within medicine here, you have to not only find the same word that translates it, but you have to find maybe a concept that might be different. What is not only connective tissue, what is the concept behind it that might be something very different in traditional Chinese medicine and so forth. So the physicians and healthcare professionals that work in these medical specialties have helped us in conjunction, working together, communicating, explaining it to each other to find the concepts and the words that will then become the keywords and the mesh terms for our database search. Then we are going to, like any systematic review, do the meta-analysis afterwards. We have patient involvement throughout with Maggie Buckley and other patient advocates around the planet, so that we will keep actually doing studies with patients whilst we're looking at the literature to ask them, what do you need us to look for? Is there something that you actually want to know or that is always bothering you? Is there something specific about this? For example, we want them to also look at the document in the end of saying, yes, this is phrased in a way that I would understand, or how does this concept relate, or what is missing, and so forth, so that we can keep doing that whilst we're doing the literature review, so that it is involved. It wants to look at the interrelatedness between the connective tissue, the mast cell activation, and the dysautonomia. So if you look at it from a childbearing point of view, simply the fact that the immune system goes down in pregnancy, it has to. What happens with somebody who has an overactive immune system beforehand? How does that affect? What is happening in the mechanisms beforehand and afterwards? What happens if the connective tissue is, as Sally said, all the relaxing in the body and very nice and smooth muscles, but to be nice to the ligaments, they do a suboptimal job and do not hold the joints together that well. If they keep popping out, what can we do? There are treatments, different ones all over the planet, that at the moment it is very sad. It depends on where you are on the planet, what access you have to which treatment. That shouldn't ever be. It is more often the case in rare diseases or orphan diseases. This is, as Sally said, we are quite sure, most probably not a rare disease, just underdiagnosed. There is the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes with all its subtypes, 13 currently, the 14th is discussed. There is also hypermobile spectrum disorder, which we're most certain is not rare at all. Professor Rodney Graham, who is one of the pioneers and the great professors in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, he once told me in 2015 at a congress in Paris, I think, he once told me, well, they did a study and they couldn't publish it. He knew I had been studying opera singing and was an opera stage manager before I went into medicine, and so he told me about this study. And they had done a study at ENO or at Covent Garden, I don't remember anymore, but to look into artists and how many artists have EDS, and the answer was 30%. So it is maybe also because this connective tissue is so amazingly sensitive that they can do art, so they do it differently. It's 30%. And he said he couldn't publish it because the control group was the stage managers. And so I said, well, sorry, Rodney, most of the stage managers have studied art before they go into stage management. That's why it wasn't a real control group. But that might be, you know, the numbers that we are looking at when they are not as symptomatic. And so then sometimes we see in about 80% of people that hormonal changes or a big traumatic event makes this house of cards crash. We see often an onset in females during puberty. We see a difference with pregnancy. So what's happening there that is provoking the system to become symptomatic? And then what can we do to roll it back and become their selves, how this body is supposed to be, because there are quite a lot of amazing things about it. There's an amazing resilience, and being hypermobile per se without bad proprioception. Proprioception is this sixth sense of to know where you are in space. You need that for gymnastics, you need that for ballet, you need it for everything, for walking. But if you have it suboptimally, it's not that much of a problem when you're not hypermobile, but when you're hypermobile, the joints can just pop out. And, if you have perfect proprioception, with hypermobility, you become Simone Biles, and if the proprioception goes, you might have a problem. And so, yes, we might be looking at many, many more people that have connective tissue disorders, and that obviously then are pregnant with it, and we need to take better, different care for them and look more into it. So any help that you can give us with languages or any help is absolutely appreciated. Write to us. We want to look at this globally. Thank you, Sue.
Wonderful. Thank you, Isabel, and thank you, Sally, again. I mean, it's very exciting to have this truly is global, and I know planetarily getting a kind of everyone together in this enormous way to kind of get all that literature and all the research together. And I kind of think about all the work when you just do an essay of pulling a few bits of literature. This is on a different level, and I think you're right to have the background that you have, Isabel, at the moment with that planet. Fantastic. Now we do have some comments coming through. Now, just for the audience to remember that I'm looking away from you at my other screen to get the questions and comments. We seem to have had quite a lot of comments. For example, Ashley. Hello, Ashley, who in brackets HEDS warrior. And she says, I've just taken on a volunteer role with the HMSA to support others with hypermobility syndromes, fitting with your calendar, Sue. Thank you. Well done, Ashley. Fabulous. And then we have another comment from Leanne Briggs. Hi, Leanne, who says, good evening. My name is Leanne Briggs, and I'm a senior lecturer at TU. I have a clinical diagnosis of HEDS with characteristics of cardiovascular EDs. I had the most horrific pregnancy and labour due to EDS and lack of midwifery education. I would be more than happy to participate in clinical research or clinical case studies. Yeah, we're going to have to send all the links. Okay, fantastic, Leanne. That'd be really helpful, I'm sure. And then Ashley, back again as the HEDS warrior, had PPROM at 29 weeks, followed by PTL/PTB at 35 weeks. I felt supported and listened to during pregnancy and birth, but I was educating a lot of people on EDS. I think this sounds as though it's a real issue for those with EDS. I graduate this year, but hopefully will go into research in the future. I'd love to help with EDS research. There's two helpers already. Well done. Thank you. And then Lee, also another comment. Thank you for raising awareness and hopefully standards of care. I disclosed my HEDS at booking in for my second pregnancy, having had my first delivery impacted by HEDS. I was made to feel idiotic for mentioning this. I sincerely hope that others receive safe and appropriate care. Well, I hope this is going to help cascade down people so they know that it exists. So thank you, Lee. And then Alice, this is just so fantastic. I can totally believe in 1 in 20, I think you said. I feel so seen as a woman who had a baby 7 years ago with hypermobility, not really seeming relevant at the time. And then another comment, goodness, this is the night for comments here. We have Lizzie Smith as a pelvic health physio. This is great. Thank you, Lizzie. That's lovely. And then Jess, hi Jess, is saying, I was diagnosed with HEDS last year in the run up to needing spinal surgery and currently 13 weeks pregnant. Oh, wow. Well done. Fantastic. Keeping fingers crossed. So wanting to be prepared for how EDS will impact on my pregnancy. So far, they seem to only be considering how EDS may interfere with anaesthetic. Is there any words that you might want to say, Isabel or Sally, that might help Jess?
I do think she should give them the pregnancy guidelines
Well,
and then talk it through,
okay.
right? We have written about more than anesthesia in there. There are things to consider. They are individual. That's why, as Sally said, this is not a strict follow. Everybody is individual, and there will be other symptoms to consider that she has, the next one doesn't, and so forth. But as soon as you get the physician to think in connective tissue as an organ, they can understand mechanisms. You know, that we're all trained, this is the kidney, this is the heart. So think of connective tissue as the organ. And then you understand, okay, the receptors in there, okay, it is outside, it's not the organ, the test that will be positive, it's actually the surrounding tissue that has the problem. So what's happening, you know? If they can think that and with the guidelines together, I think she's got a good start. If it got really bad, certainly, you know, write us an email. But I think it's a good start for anyone to start it off, and then we have literature in there as well to go further into details.
Okay, so check out the guidelines, and that's on the resources sheet.
Yeah.
And if you need any more information, go to the website, because they're working on lots of things, I believe, with little posters, you said, little smart posters. I mean, it's mostly, I mean, I think the point, it's a bit like, it takes a bit of getting used to, like when you say that the skin is an organ, because we forget that as well. It's kind of the same, isn't it? Connective tissue is an organ. It's kind of, you know, different way of thinking. So thank you for that. Lovely. Fabulous. Okay, we've got Juliet Samuel. Hi, Juliet, who says it's great to hear that impact on pregnancy and childhood is being highlighted, because in general, it sometimes takes a long time for confirmed diagnosis. Anything to highlight EDS is fantastic. And if aligned to midwifery, it's great because of the impact highlighted. Is there enough evidence to have it recognised for inclusion within the midwifery curriculum? This one is for Sally. Could there be enough in a curriculum? I think I might know the answer.
There's never enough research, ever. There's always more we can do. So I'll never say, no, that's it. Stop research. We've got enough. Because I don't think that's ever the case. But I think what is useful in the curriculums is thinking about long-term conditions and people choosing the long-term conditions. Diabetes always comes up. You know, these are the ones. I think we're going to be seeing more and more hypermobile EDS and hypermobility spectrum disorders coming up when we're looking at those long-term conditions and how they impact upon pregnancy and birth. Because I think it's more, you know, it goes into public health territory when you're looking at those wider kind of conditions that people are living with, and they're living with longer and having babies with. You know, we often just think, okay, you're pregnant, that's it. But actually, people come into pregnancy with a whole host of medical things going on and individual concerns and things to consider. So I hope it will come in more and more now that awareness is raised more and more, and more people are getting diagnosed. So they'll come armed with the information to say to their clinician, I have this diagnosis, or feel empowered to get the diagnosis, because it means that they can have more power over their choices. I think that would be important.
Fabulous. I mean, I think with that question, Juliet, the other thing you might ask is, those of you who are students, you might want to look at your program and see if this sort of condition is covered, because sometimes things get missed, and it's useful to raise it with your teaching team and say, what about this EDS? We know a good video on this, and we can start looking at it, because there are many conditions. And I mean, the curriculum is full. It's always been full. It's been full for the last however many years, but we can always get more in it. And when the most important thing is we get the things that are important to women and birthing people and families and babies, of course. Mustn't forget the babies, or I'll be in trouble. Right, another comment. So thank you for that, Sally. We've got Maura O'Callaghan. who says, hi, Maura. She says, I looked after a client who had EDS syndrome and, as like many midwives, never had heard of it. She educated me and informed me that her pregnancy actually helped her EDS again. Again, no, helped her EDS. Again, I was worried how she might maybe during the delivery and in postpartum period. She went on to have an amazing vaginal birth. Her postpartum period was slow to recover, but she was so grateful she'd had the birth she wanted. She went on to have another baby. Second pregnancy wasn't as good as the first. She had a vaginal delivery and her recovery is much quicker second time around. That's really good. And what a thank you, Maura. That's a lovely, lovely comment to make, because it illustrates how we can learn even better from our women, our experts. We need to learn from them because they've got that lived experience. So thank you for that.
I do find also, if I may, it's a very
Yes,
important
please.
comment to see the positivity in it.
Mm.
Because Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, yes, it can have very, very bad consequences and bad symptoms, no question about it. It has good sides, and sometimes pregnancy here in this matter, you have many people with hypotension, very low blood pressures, and then all of a sudden with pregnancy, the volume is better, right? So there are some features of pregnancy that might just help, enjoy it. So you know, this is as Sally so often said, when we were working on the guidelines, we have to see all the aspects and write about all of them, because it's so important to make people aware what can happen, why is it happening, what is our current understanding of it, and you know, deal in a good way with it. And so there's always positive and negative aspects about it.
No, that's really good. And I think the individuality, what might happen with one woman won't happen with another woman. So we need to be tuned very much.
Yes.
Much tuned in. That was very helpful. More comments. Oh no, we've got a question here. Leanne Briggs. Hi, Leanne. She wants to, are there any statistics on how many people are diagnosed with EDS during or following pregnancy? This would be very interesting to see if there's a correlation. I think this might be a tricky one.
Yeah, I've no idea if there's a correlation. I just know that a lot of people, some people would never bother getting a confirmed diagnosis, but they know they have it still, but it's just too much to try and get the diagnosis firm, or they don't have access to a rheumatologist or geneticist or any of those people to get that diagnosis. And from what we understand, mind you, when we interviewed people, some of them had had their babies a long time ago. So perhaps when the condition was, even less was known about the condition. So I think we're always moving forward. We're always learning more. And so we'll hopefully all be able to get diagnoses if we want them, because the awareness will be there. And just going back to the point you made about getting this in the curriculum, I think it's hard because lecturers, if they were asked to teach about this, they'd probably say, well, what is it? I have no idea about how to even teach it. How do I teach this? Because I don't understand. So maybe the guidelines would be good for curriculums as well. So just thank you for mentioning that.
I think that'd be excellent. You start off with that. I mean, that's really helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now we've got Louise Ackland. There's another comment. Hi, Louise. And she says, I've literally just booked a lady last week with EDS, so this is perfect timing for me. 1 in 20 is far more than I thought. I'm looking forward to sharing this and your links with my midwifery colleagues. Good on you, Louise. Thank you for that. Fabulous. And keep in touch. I think keep in touch with Sally and Isabel with maybe some stories or the woman's experience. That'd be lovely. Goodness, great. This is really the day of comments. So Joe is saying, Joe Brooks is looking forward to at the pregnancy guidance and the website, as I'm a bereavement midwife. And many years ago, I cared for a woman who sadly was having termination of pregnancy, who had HEDS. Back then, there wasn't much information at all. That's good. Thank you, Joe. And then we've got some comments from some students, from Ola. Hi, Ola. And she says, good evening. As a student midwife, I had not come across this syndrome, which is why I was so very interested when I saw the topic. That's great. Well done. Have a look at the website and those guidelines. You'll find it very helpful. And Ashley, that HEDS warrior again. I've been speaking about my birth experiences with other students in my uni. I shared this webinar to raise more awareness. Thank you, Ashley. That's great. Anola says, how can I get to read more about this? And thank you so much for creating of HDS. I think you'll have a look at they're on the resources. There's quite a few references, but we are going to put some more in because Isabel had some really nice references. So we put those in. So keep an eye open on the Maternity and Midwifery Forum for those. Sally wants to say something. I can see
Well, I was just saying
itching.
you could also follow us online. So if you type in my name, Sally
Ah,
Pizarro, I'm all over social media, and what I'll do is just pump out the stuff as it comes
oh, fabulous,
as
Sally.
well.
Even
So
better, even
yeah,
better. So follow Sally. And that's
Follow
on
Sally. I'm only working on my website.
time will come, Isabel. So that's on Twitter, presumably, Sally.
yeah, I try and go across all platforms, but yeah, find me
Fab,
wherever you want to follow me.
fab. So, and then we've
But
got,
just to say, for
sorry.
those that would love to help us in research or with any of this, my email is quite easy. It's research@connective-tissue-issues.com. So if you want to help us with this or anything or get more information for the research, there's a research email out there.
I think that address is on the bottom of the resources, but I will check. Thank you, Isabel.
Okay.
That's fantastic. I'm just going to round this up because, as I always say, this is the fastest hour in the week and it's coming to an end. So I just want to make sure we've got everything. Jess is another comment. And Jess, hi Jess, says, I was referred to a rheumatologist on the NHS, though they seemed to be more nervous about diagnosing and said HEDS stroke HSD were the same thing. I then went to a private specialist, which was much more helpful, though I appreciate this is not an option for everyone. So that's a comment. Thank you. And then
we're looking into this. You see,
yeah.
at the moment, we made a difference between HEDS and HSD for really also research purposes. We need to go further in the diagnostic criteria, and we're working on them to see what's happening with HSD, HEDS. So it's coming at the moment. We needed to see it as just two different things in order to help clinically better. It's advancing. Yeah.
I mean, I guess this is one of the issues about quite a it's expanding area of knowledge, which is very exciting, but also a bit as though you're sort of on shifting sands that might become a little firmer and a little bit more knowledge based, which is fantastic.
Well, that is what this literature review is looking at. Is it that new? We know that when we look into literature, it's been known since 2000 years ago. We do find literature where it explains this, and if you were to give it a name today, it would be EDS. We know that in Russia, 20 years before EDS was coined, it was called Chernogubov because that's the one who found it in Russia. So there's literature out there. And so it goes on and goes on. And certainly in Eastern Asian medicine, there's literature out there. So yes and no on new and old literature. We need to find out more and just talk with each other on this planet.
Fantastic. Well, I am so sorry to come to the end of this hour. It's been fantastic. And I think it's always exciting to learn more than you knew and share and actually understand the sort of how this great big global work is going to unfold. It's really exciting. And I hope that those of you who are watching who want to get involved will get in contact with Sally or Isabel to be part of it, whether it's a small part or a bigger part, be fantastic. And I'll say a big thank you to Isabel and Sally for joining us this evening. They're busy people. And I know it's a different time of day for Isabel too, because she's in a different part of the world. So thank you again for that as well. I want to also say a thank you to Angela, who's behind the scenes, making sure everything's beautifully recorded. So if you miss anything or you want to replay anything, and you might want to play this to colleagues and have a kind of discussion about it to just expand understanding, because it is quite complex if you haven't met it before. And also share. We always love you to share the Maternity and Midwifery Hour. It's fantastic. Also, I want to say a big thank you to Paul for fielding through all the comments. Wonderful comments. Our audience are fabulous. We've had the fantastic few questions, loads of comments, and loads of interaction, which is lovely. So thank you so much for that. And I want to say that we've got the resources will be available on site. Do get in touch with Sally on her social media, or Isabel through the webpage, and it's all on the resources sheet. Make sure if anything's missing, we'll pop it on shortly. This will be available as a podcast to those of you who have this, who are keen on this, at 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday. That'll be available. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Be here next week, same time, same place. We're going to be it's kind of slightly different. We're going to be looking at record keeping and frameworks with Lynn Jones, who's otherwise known as the motivational midwife. So it's slightly different. And also, just to remind any of you who want to book for the Northern Festival for the 18th of June, it's in Manchester. You might like to go and trip up to Manchester. We've got some superb speakers, lovely program. So I'll say goodbye to you this evening, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
The Maternity and Midwifery Forum brings you Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. All your CPD and revalidation needs met in one place. Our expertly curated box sets are the perfect way to engage with the latest thinking, issue by issue. They make revalidation easy and are the perfect accompaniment to any project or university course.